So, how are you doing?
Um, Doing pretty good. I'm a bit worried about the sun causing me to have my eyes shut most of the time,
Uh-huh.
and my voice is a bit deeper, but I think it'll be fine.
All right, let's begin. So, for people who don't know you, could you summarize what you do now?
Yeah, so I'm Jonathan Claybrough, and I've been working as a teacher at the bootcamp called ML4Good. We do 8-day boot camps, during which participants will learn about the basics of machine learning and some of the architectures behind modern developments in deep learning, like the transformer architecture. And we look at recent work in controlling the outputs of these models, making agents based on top of them, and examine the safety of these agents. Specifically, we also add in more conceptual learnings about the safety of future AI models as they get more agentic, more capable, more autonomous, and how to think about this in the context of like competitive pressures to build these models, the governance of these models, and the proliferation, like how will society change and what can we do to prepare this and make this go as nicely as possible.
Amazing. And what got you into AI safety in the first place, and what keeps you motivated to stay in it now?
I got into AI safety by reading about the early um, conceptual arguments like AI is possible, AI is a big deal. If we can automate reasoning and intellectual work, we can have great progress in sciences and medicine, and get just like greater prosperity, more of what we want. But also, people with like greater scientific research capability and industrial capability have more power. And if we are creating systems that have more of this power, we have to have some amount of control or some like security. And 3 years ago, I realized that this was a very current problem. Rather than something that might matter in 10 or 20 years, I realized that the deep learning revolution is happening right now. I got in a bit before, like ChatGPT first released, but we already had evidence of deep learning scaling with AlphaGo when AI systems beat Go players for the first time. So, like seeing this as the most important technological revolution is what inspired me to want to work on this domain, to avoid the worst outcomes, where every revolution has led to some like negative things for at least some of the people. And in the worst case, there are arguments that if AI itself like takes over, that is the worst outcome that we have possible. Yet the flip side is using these automated intelligences to advance human civilization and the kind of things that we want more of. What keeps me interested these days, I think, like the situation hasn't changed that much. It's more the case every day that AI is relevant and it's being deployed, and regulations are being made right now, and that people who actually care about these issues, trying to think carefully about them, trying to contribute, can make an outside contribution to how the world will go. And this is a great place for anyone who cares about global issues and having a large-scale impact. Though I do recommend being reasonable about it, having wide-ranging discussions to people across different spheres, so that your impact is indeed positive, and that you understand the negative downsides of different plans or actions.
Amazing. Was there a resource for you that was like a big turning point? For example, for me, like the Lex Friedman podcast with Max Tegmark really made a big difference. So,
5 years ago, I got introduced by reading the sequences of essays written by Eliezer Yudkowsky about rationality, and they are called the sequences, and one can find them on the website Less Wrong, or just I think there's a website called thesequences.org or dot something. And these introduced many underlying fundamental concepts about how to think of intelligence and reasoning, and introduced some of the fundamental problems of AI safety. And I still recommend these as an interesting resource for people who don't have much exposure to this kind of philosophy and patterns. And then the specific book that got me to really give personal interest was a book called The Precipice by Toby Ord, which argues that the risks of extinction of humanity have gone up in the last century. And the main reason is that human capability and mastery over science has allowed us to create more dangerous things, such as nuclear weapons, such as artificial, bioengineered pandemics and bioweapons, and that these particular risks are what is causing most of the risk of extinction per century that we have. I think this general premise of the book is an important one, and that as we stand on this precipice, on this edge, it's our responsibility, again, to build guardrails and to reduce these risks a second time. It's not the case that we will always be faced with risks of extinction. There is ways to advance civilizational governance and technology and defense mechanisms to get away from these risks. And that's one of the contributions that one can do by working in the field of AI safety. And yeah, I think that book still holds up to this day.
Great, definitely. Amazing. Now, how did you end up co-founding European Network for AI Safety?
The European Network for AI Safety, you can find it by its website, ENAIS.org or ENAIS.co, I forget, was intended to help people in Europe find each other if they had interests in the field of AI safety. The reason is that there are obvious hubs both in the United States, around San Francisco, around Berkeley, and in London, for people who want to work on these subjects. But Europe has a wider diversity of languages and people who are more attached to staying in their own country. And so it's from meeting a few of these other people on an online. There are Slack groups. There's one about AI alignment, and in this group I met other people from Europe who had the same impression that Europe was more divided, that Europe didn't have as easy a way to go to a hub and meet other people to discuss ideas, to find research partners. And so we did an open call for a first meeting where anyone interested in the project could join in, and then volunteers built the website and the database and a map so that people could place where are the different research organizations and advocacy groups or upskilling groups, like reading groups around AI safety in Europe. And after we built this initial prototype, built the initial base in about a month or 2 months, we got 100 to 200 signups and an initial list of what's going on in Europe, and we were quite happy about this. And this allowed us to think of, well, the next steps. How can we help Europe be connected for AI safety and help more people learn about AI safety? And so we were able to raise money by receiving a grant to hire one person as executive director who continues the missions of maintaining our database, our map, and our services, and helping organize reading programs for people to learn more and be able to get involved in AI safety, and generally provide some orientation for people who again want to get involved.
Amazing. And what's one insight or experience from ML4Good that's been most meaningful to you so far?
ML4Good has allowed me to meet like 100 or 150 students over different boot camps and seen a variety of interests. And the thing that comes up the most is that I recommend people to personalize their career and their path according to what's good for them and to what makes sense to them. AI safety, like the question about how do you help AI be a positive force on humanity is extremely large and has so many subdomains within it. And I've seen that people will find very different options for themselves. And I get the impression that they'll be more successful when they find things that they enjoy, that are sustainable. Also, when they have colleagues to work with, other people to work with. And I guess that's mostly it. I've heard of people who in the past did independent research and who later joined organizations and who said that their productivity went up by a lot once they were working with other people. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is mainly for the other people. And what would you say it was for you, like the experience of the last few years? How has it been for you?
I come from a background of software engineering where I worked in a couple startups, teams doing programming, doing bug fixing, which is a technical job. And though I had good experiences like working with my colleagues, transitioning from this to ML4Good allowed me to see a very different aspect of how life can be lived. If you yourself have never experienced different careers, like different activities, it's quite wild that one can make a living by just being on their computer all day and doing intellectual work, or one can make their living by standing up in front of a class, explaining things as best as you can, and like being there in conversation, helping people with their projects. I myself much prefer and I'm much more comfortable with teaching and conversational work than with my previous career. And so I'm glad that that AI safety brought me to change and brought me to explore what is good for me.
This is really cool. And did you had any teaching experience beforehand, before ML4Good, or was this your first time getting into teaching?
I did have like teaching high school students mathematics or languages. I had experience teaching music lessons, a bit of theory and like piano. And I worked in summer camps a couple of times, so over the summer for people who are doing sports activities. And each of these contributed quite a bit. I recommend like accumulating diversity of experiences and of course, according to one's interests. But all these did make me a much more productive teacher, especially the summer camp experiences, because I'm discovering how much wisdom there is to communities who have practiced like particular disciplines. The first ML4Good boot camps were organized by people who had enormous amounts of goodwill and energy, but did not come from this previous experience of having organized outings for 25 people, and just having had some contact of this and bringing this wisdom that I learned from others, from having learned in more established places, was really helpful to the bootcamp and to ML4Good. And so that reminds me of whenever I'm trying to do new endeavors, to find people who've done these kind of things before and to learn from them about like the important cultural practices, as these are very helpful in accelerating and avoiding the worst mistakes.
Yeah. So let's shift gears for a little bit. For the future generation, what parts in AI safety do you think are most promising for someone coming in the field now?
I do have to repeat myself about how diverse the field is, and that how promising a part of AI safety is will depend on your particular skills and interests. Um, as to what's most important or what's most lacking, I think governance is the main lever to, like, if we have good governance, that is, states and political institutions and standards labs and evaluators, if all of these organizations are competent and actually care about AI going well, then this is the main thing that needs to happen for AI to go well. Political pressure or evaluations can evaluate if systems are safe enough or not, whether we need to pause, whether we need to do further research. And in some sense, like, the speed at which the technology develops can be, and especially deployed, can be regulated or can be influenced by governance. Thus, if you think that there's this inevitable progress of AI capabilities and you're trying to race to build better techniques for alignment or for safety, that's one vision. But I would more think that if we increase our capability for governance, we can give ourselves enough time to build the safety techniques and the trust in the safety techniques for the larger scale population to be interested and on board with a larger automation within society. There are some trade-offs of slowing down because AI can have really good benefits, and it's a complicated trade-off of how to get democratic input for these large-scale decisions. So I generally think that governance is still, in the wide sense, where I recommend a lot of people put thought into and try to develop. If you want to work in it, try to develop deep expertise. There is so much, again, cultural wisdom of people who've thought about political systems for years, and it won't be easy to to find the right trade-offs if you're new to the domain. So you should be serious about learning from others and knowing that there is a lot to learn, but it's still a domain which I'd be glad if more people look into and upskill and try to become great at.
Okay. So let's say you were like the dictator of the world for like the next year and you have all the money and the resources to take any decision and you have all the agency. What do you think is missing or what you could do in this scenario that would change the current path?
I have large uncertainties about what the best regulations would be and what the best techniques would be. But I think it's quite safe to increase the amount of the investment towards like fundamental research in governance mechanisms, funding people to develop tools for governance of AI, and getting democratic input into the governance of AI. Often science, it takes time to build scientific consensus on which techniques work, whether it be in hard sciences or social sciences. And so what I'm most confident in is increasing government capability, having governments, for example, invest in the AI safety institutes and recruiting top talent who care about AI going well and who have who have knowledge and expertise in their various fields. And with this increasing amount of expertise, accelerate the rate of progress in understanding and modeling about the economic impacts of AI, in different ways, different regulations would impact this. And I would have to just play by ear for what comes next, based on these results. It's a big enough problem what I mean is AI safety is a big enough topic and subject that I think it does deserve much more amounts of careful research. And there is no magic wand here either, as there will be some dissensus, some disagreements between people working on the topic. But I'm still overall in favor of more of these discussions. They do seem to create some knowledge, and truth comes out a bit more when more people are allowed to do these works and publish and debate and care about AI safety with like good institutional backing.
Great. So now let's move away a bit from AI safety, and I'm curious more about your personal life. So let's say, what would you say? I know you mentioned that you care about like having long and deep friendships, long-term deep friendships. What would you say is any advice or like things you've learned, like cultivating them over the years?
Some of my learnings are more recent and are things that like come up to the surface when I hear this question. One of this is to be able to have a deep friendship, you have to be able to see each other. You have to be authentic, which means you have to be vulnerable. There are parts of me that I dislike. There are parts of me that are imperfect. I might judge things. I might be annoyed at certain things. And when I keep this inside, and I just focus on being a nice, friendly person, then I can have many shallow friendships. I can have many people who enjoy my presence, and I can enjoy like also like playing games or having interesting discussions. We can be good people for each other. But if I never try to dig at or share when in fact something is annoying to me, when in fact there's a problem that I don't understand, or when I would want some help for something, if I never do this, this puts a limit on how deep the friendship is. And I see myself as having kept distance from people. There was a trust issue in that I want to control how people see me. I want to present my good side. And this implies that some part of me thinks that if they see the bad sides, maybe they won't like me anymore. Maybe they won't want to be friends. And this is not just trust towards people in particular. This is trust towards the world in general. Do you have an attitude in which you think things can go well if you're yourself, if you're authentic, if you're vulnerable, or do you need defensive and guards? And I can't tell everyone that they should be more authentic, and not with everyone around them. It's going to be dependent on your situation. But I think it's quite amazing when you do find a few people where you have enough. It's obvious that you like each other, that there's lots of things that are going well, and you can allow this excess like trust and energy to allow yourself to be more vulnerable and to reveal like the parts of you that are less good. And maybe because this can allow you for them to be annoyed at your worst parts, and for you to be motivated to improve on them. Like improvement is not the only metric in life. You can also just be who you are, and like, that's fine. But I realized that in my keeping distance away from people, it's made it harder for me to work on some of my more fundamental views of the world, some kind of elitism that I have, and judginess, and that by allowing that to come out, and by allowing people to have conversations with me about like what is hurtful or wrong about the judginess that they have, and us figuring out what is a better way to think, what's a better way to live. Like I am profoundly hopeful that it is possible to get better ways to think and to feel. And because of this, it is worth being open and cultivating these deep friendships, which will allow you to grow and allow your friends to grow with you.
All right. So, which meditation practices or related things have been helpful for you that you would recommend?
It's hard for me to recommend them without knowing who I'm talking to. So I can say what was helpful for me. There is a book called The Mind Illuminated, and it's abbreviated TMI, The Mind Illuminated, which teaches about first the theory behind meditation, how the mind works, how distractions happen, how our attention moves, how our awareness can be broad or narrow. And these teachings like felt true to my experience, that when I went to sit and practice, I found that yes, I could see these movements of my awareness. And the book teaches how you can use this to become more happy, like more free, less suffering. And this was very specifically useful to my development in psychology, because a lot of parts of me dislike being uncomfortable, and I got used to always distracting myself away from uncomfortable things. If I had pressure from work, well, until the deadline arrives, I would just like watch videos, because all my attention would be taken away by videos. With the meditation practice, I learned to be comfortable with uncomfortable things, like to have a kind of pain and just sit with it. And as I could sit with it, I could have different reactions. So specifically, one part of training in meditation is equanimity, learning to be at ease with the pain. And this allowed me to see what parts of my behaviors and emotions I disliked. For example, which parts of my jobs I disliked. And by being able to understand it more fully, I could change it. Like before, I wouldn't even see what was a problem in my life. Now I could see the problems and take better decisions to improve my life. So meditation like gave me more clarity to understand what was going on in my emotional system. And this is from practices from the Mind Illuminated.
Mm-hmm.
And then for longer term like progress, I've only read a bit of the book, Mastering the Core Teachings of the Buddha. And that book goes further into theory, but I really liked how it discussed more ethical, moral behavior, and how this is a deep practice. I think this is the second like meditation book I would recommend.
Yeah, great, beautiful. What is one thing you feel a lot more people should know or do in their life?
It's probably going to have to be that enlightenment is real, and meditation practices and theory can help you get there, and that some practices can get you much faster than others. Like Fetter's inquiry is the name of a particular kind of insight practice to directly remove resistances in your mind, frictions, and like sufferings that you're creating yourself. But things that go faster can be more dangerous. And if you have a good guide, like maybe that's the best way to do. But if you're discovering things alone, I do recommend most people read a bit of The Mind Illuminated, and that people get in touch with other meditation practitioners to discover how that affected their life. I had heard about meditation since 18 years old, and I never started practicing until 25. And I do think that it would have been a profoundly good thing in my life. and I want to say, I'm not just talking about meditating to relax, or there are some meditation practices taught just in that became more mainstream and that are also taught in therapy. I am talking about the more deeper sense of like enlightenment is real, in the sense that you could live without suffering. And that seems to be true, and it seems you can get there while staying the kind of person that you are, with positive values, being a good person. And this is what I would recommend more people hear about and get into.
Great. But you would still, let's say, separate this from what a lot of, let's say, some people might say enlightenment is like walking on water or these superpowers or something. So you would not say it's that. It's more like just not having unnecessary suffering anymore, maybe.
Yes. I'm talking about psychology.
Yeah.
I do not... So some people who follow the meditation path are believers in Buddhism, and like they believe in reincarnation or things that are different from the scientific model. And in general, I think I prefer not taking a stance. Like, I have my personal beliefs on what is true or not, and I mostly apply meditation theory as things about psychology, about how the mind works. I don't really engage with theory about how the world is in Buddhism. But I don't think it's like what I mean. What I'm saying is real is the fact that you can live your life in such a way that your psychology does not have suffering anymore. And this seems like a good idea.
All right, very nice. Second last question. If the alignment problem is solved and we have benevolent AGI, how would you spend your time in that world?
That's a great question that I love asking this question to others, to figure out if they are happy in life and if they know what life is about. Because what are you working towards in life? I think that's a good answer. And one of mine is, I really enjoyed growing up with games and understanding how to solve problems. And there are particular like video games. I like designing new games and playing new kinds of games and exploring multiplayer cooperation and multiplayer competition. And when I have my time, I like doing this again, and I would do more of this in the future as well.
Great. The last question, I know you already mentioned some books, but still, has there been any other book that you feel has had a big impact in your life?
Just descriptively, I grew up as a Christian, and the Bible had a big impact on my life. But after that, if some people want some general introduction to a bunch of philosophical topics, like The Sequences by Eliezer Yudkowsky are very interesting readings that I recommend to a lot of people.
Amazing, great. Then thank you so much for taking the time to have this interview. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Amazing.